In 1978, a man built a jet-powered boat in his backyard and broke the world water speed record by hitting 317.6 miles per hour. That record has never been broken. Now, over 4 decades later, his son is back, with more power, danger, and a new machine built to chase the very record his father set. So, will he make it? This is the story of Spirit of Australia 2, and the family that spent nearly 50 years pushing the limits of what's possible on water. Let's rewind to the 1970s. While most people were mowing lawns or fixing up old Holdens, Ken Warby was in his backyard, building a jet-powered boat. Yeah, a jet boat in the backyard, with a dream to go faster than any human had ever gone on water. The water speed record has always belonged to the bold. For years, it was chased by legends and names like Donald Campbell and John Cobb. But in 1978, one Australian man did what no one else could. On a lake in New South Wales, Ken strapped himself into the now legendary Spirit of Australia, fired up the jet, and absolutely launched across the water at 317.6 miles per hour. That's over 500 kilometers an hour. That's highway speed, but 6 times. He wasn't backed by a fancy factory or $1 million sponsor. It was just raw guts, DIY engineering, and a fire-breathing engine pulled from a fighter jet. And somehow, it worked. The world watched with its jaws on the floor, and that record is surprisingly still untouched to this day. But this isn't just a story about some wild Aussie breaking a record. It's about what comes after. Because while the world moved on, Ken's son Dave was taking notes. From the moment he could walk, he was surrounded by speed, jet engines, and the legend of his dad. And from a young age, he knew exactly what he wanted: to carry that legacy forward. But Dave isn't just chasing history, he's building on it. So, Spirit of Australia 2 didn't just show up overnight. The beast took 5 years to build. Think of it as the sequel to a blockbuster that is bigger, louder, and designed to blow everything else out of the water. The boat is the result of hard-earned knowledge and a lifetime of experience. Ken and Dave didn't rush it. They went back to the data from those record-breaking runs, every lift, and every shift in balance. They looked at what worked and what nearly didn't. The new boat is longer. The sponsons, those small outriggers that stabilize the hull, have been reshaped. The center of gravity has been adjusted to give better balance at extreme speeds. The rudder's been redesigned, and the safety systems are light years ahead of what Ken had in 1978. Because at 500 kilometers an hour, the tiniest mistake becomes a full-blown disaster. But one of the biggest changes is under the hood. Spirit of Australia 2 is powered by a Rolls-Royce Orpheus 803 jet engine, straight out of an old Italian Air Force Fiat G91 fighter jet. Compared to the original, this engine brings close to 50% more thrust. It's loud, powerful, and it's a monster on water. Safety, too, has leveled up. Back in 1978, Ken didn't even have a seatbelt. Now, Dave sits inside a fully reinforced safety capsule with a 6-point harness, a Hans device for neck protection, GPS tracking, a 2-way radio system, onboard air, and a multi-stage fire suppression system. The boat is also built with onboard flotation systems to help in case of a crash. Still, at these speeds, the risks are enormous. But if anything goes wrong, the boat fights to save him. Every inch of Spirit of Australia 2 is built by Dave and the Warby Motorsport team. He's not just the driver, he's the builder, designer, and test pilot. He welded the frame, shaped the hull, and fitted the systems. He knows every inch of this thing like the back of his hand. He knows how every bolt behaves. He understands how the water feels beneath the hull. Now that Spirit of Australia 2 is ready to hit the water, the world hasn't seen a serious record attempt in decades. But Dave Warby isn't rushing into anything. He knows the stakes. When you're dealing with a jet engine strapped to a thin shell of carbon and metal, there's no such thing as just giving it a try. Every run had to be perfect. Testing of the boat began quietly. first on smaller lakes, then gradually stepping up. Lower speeds at first, just feeling out how the boat moved and how the jet pulled. Each pass gave the team more insight, more data, and more confidence. Dave didn't just sit in the cockpit and hope. He felt every run. He could tell when the nose lifted a little too high, or when the tail needed a split-second correction. All those years building hydroplanes, racing big block boats, and sitting in his dad's old Merlin-powered monster, it all came back here. As tests got faster, the team began targeting locations. The boat needed perfect conditions. The original record was set on Blowering Dam, and naturally, the same strip of water was calling again. Nostalgia aside, it offered what few places could: a long, smooth, straight stretch with enough room to run flat out. The boat was ready. Dave was ready. And just like his father before him, he would soon face the silence before the roar. After years of designing, building, testing, and fine-tuning, it's all come down to this. This is where the record will be challenged. Dave Warby climbs into the cockpit of Spirit of Australia 2. The team straps him in, and the canopy locks shut. Inside, it's calm and silent, just the soft hum of radios and the faint splash of water nearby. And then, without warning, the stillness broke. The Rolls-Royce Orpheus 803 began to spool up, low at first, then rising into a deafening scream as the jet came to life. That's the sound of 10,000 horsepower waking up. Dave rolls forward, lining up for the run. There's no launch pad or runway here, just a man, a machine, and the thin line between history and disaster. Dave glanced at the gauges, steadied his grip, and eased the throttle open until ignition hit, and Spirit of Australia 2 exploded forward like a missile launched from the surface of the Earth. Spirit of Australia 2 doesn't glide. It skims the surface at terrifying speed, barely touching the water. Every ripple feels like a punch. The faster it goes, the more unpredictable the water becomes. At this speed, even a small shift in wind or wave can be deadly. But Dave holds steady, left hand on the wheel, right on the throttle. His eyes never move from the horizon. At nearly 450 kilometers an hour, he's covering a full kilometer every 7 seconds. The boat rocks gently side to side, not as a mistake, but a technique passed down from Ken. It helps release air pressure under the hull and keep the boat grounded, because at these speeds, staying low is the only way to stay alive. On shore, the team stood frozen, breathless, watching the blur of white streak down the dam with a roar that shook the valley, knowing full well that there were no second chances at this level. But the boat held steady. The balance was perfect. The nose stayed planted, and the sound of that jet engine echoed like a war cry down the waterway until it was over. The jet wound down, the water grew quiet again, and Dave was alive. The boat was intact, and, in this sport, sometimes that alone is a kind of victory. They needed the data, the GPS logs, the official timing, the confirmation that this run wasn't just fast, but record-breaking. Whether or not the record fell that day, one thing was certain. Spirit of Australia 2 was not just a tribute or a replica. It was a new chapter in a story that began in a backyard decades ago and returned now, wrapped in thunder and speed, with a Warby at the wheel once again. So while Dave Warby's chasing history on water, I'm chasing your subscription on YouTube. Hit subscribe and be part of this wild journey. Back at the dock, the numbers finally come through. The GPS logs confirm it. The timers back it up. The run is official. The final speed is 447 kilometers per hour. And while the record may still stand, Spirit of Australia 2 has proven it belongs in that fight. The boat held together under full load. The design worked, and Dave had done what so few ever dared by building and piloting a jet-powered missile across water at speeds that turned most people's stomachs inside out. It wasn't about chasing his father's shadow anymore. It was about carrying the name forward. For Dave, this wasn't just a successful run. It was personal. He grew up watching his father, Ken Warby, become the fastest man on water. As a kid, he stood in the backyard while the original Spirit of Australia was being built from scratch. The run was a success, but for Warby Motorsport, it wasn't the finish line. It was just the first milestone. Spirit of Australia 2 was fast enough to silence doubters, but still shy of that legendary 317.6 mph world record. And that's exactly why they're not done. The data from the test run showed something incredible. The boat held its line, the balance was stable, the systems worked, and Dave stayed in full control at terrifying speeds. There's now hard proof that Spirit of Australia 2 has the bones and the power to go a lot faster. In the months ahead, more test runs are planned. The team is working on refining the boat's setup, dialing in the balance, and shaving off every bit of drag they can. They're learning from every run and adapting consistently. Because in a sport where a tiny miscalculation can be the difference between victory and catastrophe, there's no such thing as good enough. So, what did you think of this insane legacy story? And what record-breaking madness should we dive into next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the ride, tap like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next insane speed story. See you in the next one.